What's up everybody, New-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing my review for Shin Gojira. So this is Godzilla-Thon episode 34. I don't know how many times I have to review this movie on the channel. I don't actually have to review it any times. I love this movie, so I review it over and over and over again. I mean, I've done the English dub review, I've done the Japanese review, I've done an in-depth one. This one's got to be my fourth, at least. So getting into it, I mean, you know, I don't really need to get into the background of my experience with this movie, right? If you really want to know about the background of what I thought about when leading up to this movie, you really can just go back and watch my videos. I mean, I made videos leading up to the release of this movie, which this is the first Godzilla-Thon that we're covering of a movie that I covered on the channel, which is fun. It's really cool. If you really want to know, like, what was D-Man thinking at this stage in Godzilla's, you know, the advertisement campaign, or like leading up to the movie, you can go back and find videos and you will hear exactly what I was thinking. I don't have to recap it. In fact, I probably shouldn't, because I might wind up contradicting myself due to me not remembering very well. Anyways, getting into my review for Shin Godzilla, this will not be any different from any other Godzilla-Thon. I'm going to do the same general plot rundown. Everything's going to be generally the same as usual. So the movie starts out with a boat called the Glory Maroon being discovered off the coast of Hanada. A geyser erupts, destroying the boat and the aqua line that runs underneath the ocean. Yusaki and Rando meet in the Prime Minister's office to speak about the incident. Residents in the Tokyo Aqualine area are all joking around about this situation, not taking it very seriously until something starts stomping on the ground floor above them. This was my first indication that I was in for a treat, because the movie starts out, it does not skip a beat. You get straight into it. Godzilla has his presence shown from the very first scene of this movie. You feel the presence of Godzilla. Now, although he won't wind up looking like Godzilla until much later into the movie, you still get the sense that he's there. You still get the feel, and once you start hearing the footsteps going on the seafloor, oh man, that was awesome, because it's the 54 footsteps, the sound effects are all classic, I love it so much. Rando sees footage of a giant creature walking around on the ground on YouTube, or whatever he's looking on, I don't know. The government goes into a panic and they can't figure out what it is. They're all discussing about, oh, is it a thermal vent or a volcano, or is it a nuclear sub? What is it? But Rando discusses the potential that the heat being released by the water is being caused by a massive creature. He's, of course, not taken seriously. Yuki from Space Godzilla, which great, Shin Godzilla using old classic actors. I don't know why they didn't get the actor who played Ogata back. That's crazy to me. This is the second Godzilla movie in a row that Akira Takarada expressed interest in, and they didn't bring him back for even a cameo. Anyways, getting back to what I was saying, Yuki from Space Godzilla is all focused on the response, but the Prime Minister is more focused about meetings and the politics of the situation instead of dealing with it. Hideki stops Rando and warns him to stop being a rebel and stop bringing up stupid things such as a giant creature causing the eruption. Suddenly, a tail rises up out of the ocean, sending the government into a panic. Rando now takes action, only wanting a response, but everyone around him doesn't seem to understand what to do. Most people are just worried about the cost, and there's biologists worried about the new species. The creature starts moving up the Tanu River, and the creature works its way through the shallows. Yusaki Shimura calls his friend Hiromi in. Hiromi thinks the creature can in fact come on land, as the footage online suggests that it can stand on two legs and support its own weight. The creature makes its way to the Kamata ward of Tokyo, busting through multiple bridges along his way. During the Prime Minister's press conference, in which the Prime Minister prematurely calls the creature's soon-to-be death, as he says that it will beach itself in the shallows and be killed by its own weight, the creature makes landfall in the Kamata ward. There's a fantastic scene, you guys know how much I love this sequence, that starts with frantic edits showing the fear of everyone around as the monster attacks. The music ramps up and plays one of my all-time favorite songs, Persecution of the Masses. As the monster gets to the Shinagawa district, the Prime Minister is paused, not knowing what to do in response. Eventually, the JSDF is mobilized and sent out against the monster. The creature halts in Shinagawa and evolves into a 150-foot tall red creature. I think he's just a little bit over 150 feet tall, but you get the point, around that area. The JSDF helicopters are called off because civilians are in the area. The civilians are more than likely killed when the creature turns around, makes a 180, and starts bolting back towards the ocean. This all happens only after its dorsal fins start to burn red, though. Now, when I actually saw the movie, I didn't quite know what was happening right here. I honestly thought that the second form, or technically third form of Godzilla, was about to do some lame version of the atomic breath, like maybe he was gonna shoot out the blue classic like mist atomic breath, and then later on in the movie he'd show up with the purple version. I didn't really know how that was gonna play out, but I like the way that it happens because it introduces a very new and fascinating thing, that being Godzilla's dorsal fins aren't just there for no reason. They're actually thermal vents to help release heat in his body. This also opens up Godzilla's back for a weak point so that they can exploit it later in the movie, as Godzilla's back needs to be ripped open and exposed so that you can penetrate the skin, that way the heat can release easier. His skin is in fact so thick that it traps the heat inside, and he'll die if he doesn't have a way to release the heat. So his body slits open in multiple different areas so that the heat can escape. Shin Godzilla's got one of the most crazy biologies of all Godzillas, with starting out with very large gills that will seep blood on land, and then he evolves into a creature that can survive on land, but it turns out that he's so overheated that he needs to get to the ocean where his back can split open and he can breathe and live, and then eventually he just turns into this massive creature. So it's a very cool, very crazy evolution. The Minister's Council head out and check the damage firsthand. Yaguchi calls his friend Izama to make a task force to combat the creature. It's a band of rebels, including some leading biologists and chemists. The discovery is made by Pink Towel Guy. I don't honestly know his name, and I don't think they actually ever state his name in the movie. You would have just had to have read his title card on screen, but I missed it. I was too busy reading the subtitles. Anyways, Pink Towel Guy discovers that the creature will continue to evolve. Hiromi discovers that the creature runs on nuclear fission. An American-Japanese ambassador is called into Japan. Her name is Kyoko Ann Patterson. She requests the help of a man called Goro Maki. Yes, that is the exact same name from Son of Godzilla. I still don't know if that was an intentional Easter egg or not. I have to think it was. I think there was also someone with the name Goro Maki in Godzilla 1984 too, something like that. He's a man who apparently predicted the appearance of this monster. Maki is missing. He turns out to be the owner of the Glory Maroon from the start of the movie. Maki named the creature Godzilla. He also gave it a Japanese name, Gojira, according to the Japanese legends of Odo Island, where apparently he was born, which is a fantastic and very sneaky callback to the original 54 movie. They never directly call it out and are like, oh, look, Odo Island in 1954, a monster was there. They never do that. They just say, back 60 years ago, which places it in 1954, Goro Maki on Odo Island was either born, or we never get an age estimate for how old he is, but I'm gonna assume he was in his teens or whatever. So he witnessed some stuff that really messed him up, and what he witnessed was the Japanese, we're supposed to believe it's the Japanese and Americans just dumping nuclear waste into the ocean. Maki's last words are written down on a piece of paper, saying, "I did as I pleased, you do the same." This is the big theme of the movie, as Anno, the director, really wants to push that message that people need to do what they please. They need to start working together and getting things done that will benefit everyone, and do what they please. Do as in work together. I'll actually go more in depth with all of the themes and allegory of this movie next week during, not Godzilla-Thon, because this will be the last week of Godzilla-Thon for a while, but during a video essay that I've been working on for a while. So the origins of Godzilla, as they're briefly explained, are in 1954, an underwater ancient marine creature, we still don't know totally what that means, fed off of nuclear waste. Maki finds out and is kicked out of his scientific field. We don't know exactly why he was kicked out of his field, presumably just so that the government could bury this whole incident. But regardless, he's kicked out of his field, much like Dr. Mifune from Terror of Mechagodzilla. Turns out Godzilla's body harbors elements unknown to science, which explains why he's able to stand on land without dying, and how he's able to self-evolve. Godzilla's body evolves to fit the environment it's in. If it's in a hostile environment, aka if the military is trying to kill him, he will evolve so that he cannot be killed by the military, so that he can survive in his environment. If you hit him with a nuclear bomb, he will evolve so that he can survive in an environment where he's hit by a nuclear bomb. That's just the way it's explained. We know that there's rapid evolutions that he can undergo in order to not die on the spot. So, presumably, this Godzilla is immortal. The plan is made to stop Godzilla's blood in place so that he can't evolve, which will render him immobile, because his blood will start to heat up to the point when he has to rapidly cool himself down, forcing him to evolve into a frozen state. That's actually what goes on at the end of the movie. If you pay attention, they don't just freeze Godzilla's skin. That's not at all what they do. They only halt his blood in place. What Godzilla then does is start to overheat, making him rapidly freeze. You start to see him glow at the end of the movie, and he then evolves into this frozen, like almost stone state. That way he won't die. And notice how his next evolutions, the things coming off of his tail, they don't really seem like they can have blood. They seem like just skin and bones. That's probably to reduce the ability to have the coagulant used on them. Godzilla relands in his fourth form in my favorite sequence of the entire movie, and honestly, probably my favorite sequence of Godzilla history. That sequence is Godzilla's landing in, I don't remember where he lands in, honestly, but wherever Godzilla lands, Godzilla's landing on the beach all the way to his destruction of Tokyo with the atomic breath. Probably my favorite portion of Godzilla history right there. What makes this scene so great is the fast-paced nature of it. We get the sense that Godzilla's been on land for a long time. They even call out how slowly he's moving. However, things that really make this seem exciting is the action-packed editing. Everything goes by so fast. Godzilla makes his way through Tokyo very, very quickly, and that is aided by the wonderful music of Akira Ifukube. We have some of my favorite Godzilla themes of all times making their way back into this movie. King Kong vs. Godzilla's Godzilla theme. We have Godzilla's theme from Terror of Mechagodzilla, of course one of my favorite themes of all time. And then we also have some very exciting new music that's introduced in this scene as well. It is stated that Godzilla's head and feet must be attacked in order to reduce radiation leaks. Turns out that Godzilla's body harbors so much radiation that they worry shooting him in the stomach will release all that radiation into the public and into the world. So what they do is they fire upon his head and his feet, presumably so that they can knock him down and use the Gucci coagulant on him. If you remember, leading up to the release of this movie, anytime I did a trailer breakdown or talked about the trailers of this movie or talked about any of the footage of this movie, I was always bringing up how they were shooting Godzilla's head and feet, and I never had a reason why. I thought maybe, you know, they're just trying to kill him faster. The fastest way to kill an animal is by shooting it in the brain, right? And a lot of us bounced that theory around, and a lot of people noticed that too, is how they were shooting at Godzilla's head and his feet, and we never had a good answer until after we saw the movie. That's one of the best things about leading up to this movie, was how much speculation I was able to do. It was a lot of fun, and once I finally got those answers, it was equally as fun to know, oh, that's the reason why. The army mobilizes into a sister city of Tokyo to stop Godzilla. Godzilla is unfazed by everything the JSDF does to him. First off, they shoot some giant turrets at him, and these massive bullets just ping off his skin and fly in all different directions. It is so cool and very well done. We've never seen that level of combatants from the military against Godzilla. We've never actually gotten to see what bullets would do to Godzilla. Usually you'd think they just like hit him and crunch or something, but here you see his skin is so hard that it literally deflects the bullets. The JSDF start to unload missiles on him, and it just explodes everywhere. These missiles are going off right on his head, and every time the smoke envelops his skull, suddenly his face will just appear coming out of the smoke. It's absolutely awesome. It turns out that helicopters just don't have an effect on God. Type 10 tanks, which are pretty old school actually, are used against Godzilla, as well as long-range missiles bombard his skull. All of this does absolutely nothing, except for provide one of the most visually interesting scenes of Godzilla history, because the directing here from Anno and the cinematography from Shinji Iguchi is so great. This scene is absolutely amazing and very underrated. A lot of people will give the atomic breath sequence so much praise. However, scenes that I think equally match it would be the moving shot from the car earlier in the movie, where you're in a car's perspective looking at Godzilla as he's walking through this building, and you eventually catch up to him, and he's moving one way, you're moving the other, and you eventually meet up right as he steps on a building, and you're just looking up at how massive he is. And this sequence right here, I think this sequence has so much interesting and creative directing that we've never seen before, that it gets so little praise for what it's worth. It is incredible. And everyone, the atomic breath scene is amazing. Yes, I'm not going to deny that. But this scene is awesome as well. I think a lot of people need to remember how great this scene is. Godzilla's destruction in the city could have been more. Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see him actually go after things and destroy things instead of just walking a line. That being said, they make it work. They make it work so well that you actually forget how little you see Godzilla destroy stuff in this movie. I love the way the camera is attached to the tank barrels as they're firing at Godzilla, or the way that you're seeing soldiers' perspective as they shoot Godzilla. It reminds me a lot of both Gareth Edwards and Ishiro Honda all in one. Soon some jets drop heavy artillery on Godzilla, and this actually seems to affect him. He starts to turn away and head towards the ocean until they blast him even more with bombs, until he's basically bombed into oblivion. Smoke covers the entire screen and we don't know what's happened to Godzilla. Suddenly, out of the smoke flies a bridge, which apparently Godzilla kicked off of its stand and into the air, and it lands on some army tanks. Godzilla emerges unfazed. Tokyo is evacuated, however, they don't fully evacuate Tokyo. There's a lot of people who wind up dead. Japan goes into defense against Godzilla, and one of my favorite songs from the movie, Defeat Is No Option, kicks in. US bombers fly into Tokyo, and Godzilla develops an EMP to shut off all the lights in Japan. It makes for one of my favorite shots of the entire franchise history. This movie actually contains my favorite shot of franchise history, but this is one of my favorite shots of Godzilla stepping and all the lights going out around him, and every time it just cuts back and you just see every time you hear the all the lights in a certain district will go out and until it's completely pitch black and you just see Godzilla's flame. And the red burning in Godzilla's skin is one of my favorite things about this design. It reminds me a lot of the burning Godzilla design from the 90s. It's very cool. The Japanese cabinet is evacuated. Important members leave by helicopter. Other members, such as Yaguchi, leave by car. Rando sees Godzilla in the city, which is very cool as well. And it's soon afterwards that the US hit Godzilla with some MOB-2s. I don't know. That's just what the planes or the bombs are called or something. Now, these bombs do some damage. They really make Godzilla bleed. These things hit him directly in the back, right where his body needs to be open so that his blood can flow, and they penetrate straight through that thin layer of skin and explode in his back, creating a geyser of blood. In response, Godzilla gets really agitated and starts to glow bright purple. One of my favorite things about this scene is seeing other people's perspectives, such as the main prime minister's perspective as well as Rando's perspective, as you can see the glow start to emit from around buildings. Godzilla's mouth splits open in two ways. First, he detaches his bottom jaw, and second, his bottom jaw splits in half, which I don't know the biology logistics of that, but it's at least very interesting to look at. It's very cool to look at. Then all of a sudden, Godzilla releases this black mist throughout the city. Now, this scene was spoiled for me before I got to see the movie in theaters, so I didn't really get to experience it, but the second this happened, my entire theater erupted into applause, and I did too. It is so rewarding to see. So, the black mist starts going through the city before Godzilla suddenly ignites it. His eye seals over with some sort of, I don't know, protective lens, and Godzilla sets Tokyo into a sea of fire. He shifts the fire into a thin purple beam of atomic energy. Godzilla kills the plane that bombed him before capping off the radiation, which seems to hurt him. The second he closes his mouth and stops releasing the atomic energy, he roars. And the only time he roars in this movie is when he's hurt. All the radiation builds up in Godzilla's body and he undergoes a rapid evolution. Suddenly, he develops the ability to emit the radiation from his dorsal fin, which destroys 2 more planes flying above him by shooting just multiple beams straight through the air. I did not expect this. I expected Godzilla to only use his laser light show during the daytime, but seeing it at night with all the darkness surrounding him and the purple cutting through the night sky is a real spectacle to behold. I feel bad for anyone who didn't get to see this movie in theaters because it was absolutely fantastic. Then Godzilla uses his front beam, his solo mouth beam, to destroy the rest of Japan. He kills the Prime Minister and his cabinet and burns the entire city down. This is the best shot of the movie. Godzilla walking in front of a wall of fire as his atomic energy depletes and he soon shuts down. The next morning, the task force reassembles to stop Godzilla. It's pretty much left to Rando Yaguchi, Hideki Akasaka, and some other misfits. Yaguchi breaks all the rules in order to stop Godzilla by sending the biological information across Japan so that everyone can study it. A US-Japan task force is made to combat Godzilla. It turns out Godzilla has some sort of phased array radar, whatever that means, EMP, that stops all electronics from being used around him. He emits this thing at will, meaning Godzilla, although shut down, is still conscious. One of Godzilla's dorsal fins was shot off during the bombing by the US earlier in the movie. It's revealed that it's starting to grow a new Godzilla. This is a much more in-depth scene in the deleted scene that shows chunks of Godzilla's skin turning into faces. The US wants to drop a thermonuclear warhead on Godzilla. Iguchi is pissed at Hideki, who states that the warhead is the only way to stop Godzilla, and this is the only way to gain international support. He says it's a scrap and build reality. Iguchi decides it is now that the freezing plan must be ramped into full effect. They have a coagulant formula, the only thing they need is to produce it. Iguchi calls every company in Japan into production of this drug against Godzilla. The Prime Minister okays the Iguchi plan, however he also signed off on the warhead. Godzilla will reach full force in 15 days and be active again. The US will also drop a nuclear warhead on the 15th day. The US states if Godzilla surfaces in New York, they will do the same thing and drop a nuke on him there. Turns out Maki knew how to stop Godzilla, but allowed Godzilla to attack Japan because the Japanese didn't protect his wife, who was killed due to radiation poisoning or something. We never totally find out. It's right after this talk of what happened to Maki after his death that we cut to a quick scene of Godzilla's tail splitting open. This scene is super controversial, and I've covered it in depth before. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. The pink towel guy learned that the map of Godzilla's DNA that Goro Maki left behind at his death actually must be folded like origami before you can fully understand it. As it is discovered, Godzilla can live to evolve anywhere. The Germans help solve Maki's riddle, and it turns out that the Iguchi plan will work against Godzilla. Hideki and Izumi convince the Prime Minister to proceed with the Yashiori operation. The JSDF love the plan. Iguchi reaches out to the French to interrupt the nuclear countdown to buy Japan more time. The US helps with the Iguchi plan. Izumi pushes for Rando to become the Prime Minister after Godzilla. Iguchi inspires his troops for the Yashiori operation, stating that there will be a high risk of acute radiation exposure, which is something this movie does very well, as makes you really feel the fear that Godzilla is radioactive. It doesn't do it as much as I'd like, it doesn't do it to the level of the 54 movie, but it still does it very well. The Yashiori operation begins when some bullet trains bomb Godzilla, waking him up. He starts to release the atomic back blast beams, ooh that's a mouthful, and drones bomb him from long range. The point is to run him out of atomic energy in his dorsal fin projectiles. This works, and he has to start firing the beam from his mouth. Suddenly, he's hit by so many bombs that he can't take it, and this bolt of a light runs up his tail, turning the tip of his tail purple and emitting a beam from his tail. The drones continue to bomb him and all the surrounding buildings around him. They knock all the buildings over onto him so that he can't get up. He does, however, break through the buildings and starts to get up when some long-range missiles fire more rockets, blowing up buildings around him. The buildings around him land on him, knocking him over. When Godzilla is down, the coagulant is injected into his mouth. Godzilla atomic breaths the crew into oblivion. He is slowed down by the coagulant, but can still stand up and starts to run away. Trains explode, knocking him back over, and the coagulant is pumped into his mouth even more. He gets up before the coagulant takes full effect, forcing him to freeze. Turns out that Godzilla will be frozen for at least 2 or 3 years. Iguchi and Hideki will run for office for the next election, or something, I couldn't totally tell. It sounds like Rando wants to be Prime Minister now because he respects what happened and he wants to make it so that if Godzilla wakes back up, nothing like that can ever happen again. He will be on top of the game, but it also, the whole movie sets up Higuchi to run for office, so I don't know if the idea is that they're going to run against each other or run with each other. Point is, they're both going for higher positions in the government. Kyoko backs Rando, stating that she'll be president of the US and he'll lead Japan and they can lead together. Iguchi owns his decisions against Godzilla no matter how many casualties they caused, and Iguchi states that things are far from over. That is the last line of the movie, hopefully implying that there will be a sequel. Godzilla's tail starts to evolve and the movie ends. All these humanoids are coming off of it and the tip of it splits open into a face. That's what happens at the end. The human story in this movie is very good. I love Rando Iguchi. He's one of my favorite Godzilla protagonists. And the thing that I really love about the human story in this movie is that it's driven by the kaiju story. Everything that happens in this movie is a result of Godzilla's actions. Everything is a reaction to Godzilla, which makes this movie, even though Godzilla's not in it a lot, feel very Godzilla-centric. As some of you guys I'm sure remember from my War of the Gargantuas review a year ago, I really love when the movies focus on the kaiju first and foremost. The kaiju don't always have to be there a lot, but just as long as their presence is felt, that is what I want. The kaiju story in this movie is great for that reason as well. The human and the kaiju story play off each other perfectly. And the kaiju stuff actually on screen is very creative. It's original, fun, and menacing all at the same time. I mean, Godzilla's first form doesn't, alright, let me be specific because people will always get confused. Godzilla's first form is not on screen. Godzilla's second form, the KONG-A-THON form, it's laughable. I like the third form, I like the Shin Gojira, and I love his final stage. The effects in this movie are fantastic. There's only few scenes in this movie when the special effects will look a little fake, and even then, they still look better than Justice League 2017. Yeah, that was a random dig at Justice League. I just saw that movie, and oh, the special effects were awful. The music in this movie is amazing. My top 2 favorite soundtracks of all time. I really struggle. I always go back and forth between the original movie and this one as the number 2, but I think this one does hold a place as number 2 for me. The number 1 soundtrack is Mothra vs. Godzilla. Awesome music in that movie. And overall, I give Shin Godzilla a solid 9 out of 10. If you wanted me to go more in depth with some topic on the movie, I'm sure I do in another video. I'll just leave it at that. You can go back and listen to my solo review from when I very first saw the movie, or my solo review from when I reviewed the English cut from a couple months ago. You can also go back and listen to my in-depth review that I did with Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir, back when the movie came out. That does it for this one, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out.